do it. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are so glad you are here with us, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, we are pleased to deliver a program featuring two longtime close friends, both of whom have a lot to say, and I'll promise you will leave today smarter than you arrived. More on that in a moment. Before we get started, let's take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview itself. And also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees. I want to thank our sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this free. Thank you to First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back my good friend and alum of this platform, David Hazen from New York. For over 25 years, David has worked in the entertainment industry where he's held a number of senior positions at top music and media companies. His deep music marketing experience includes senior roles held at Madonna, The Orchard, Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, MTV Networks, Putumayo World Music, and Wind Up Entertainment. David is a frequent speaker, interviewer, and moderator at leading industry events around the world, including IEG, South by Southwest, Music Biz, Amplify, Canadian Music Week, Madame, Mondo New York, Indie Week, San Francisco Music Tech, and MooCon, among others. Over the course of his career, he's consulted with more than 25 tech, brand, and media event and festival clients, including Crates, which is pronounced Crates, and spelled with a Q. Crates is a complete end-to-end platform and solution for labels and artists that need short-run, on-demand vinyl, removing all financial and inventory risks and hassles, most importantly, providing delivery way faster. If you or anyone you know needs marketing and communication strategy or communications help, please reach out to David. He is a rock star. And joining David as today's special guest is Harvey Leeds. Harvey spent 35 years at Sony Entertainment as Senior VP of Radio Promotion and Marketing, and then Senior VP of Artist Development. He's responsible for the success of numerous careers, including Boston, Cyndi Lauper, Gloria Estefan, Culture Club, Pearl Jam, Incubus, Korn, Kebmo, Living Color, and Rage Against the Machine, among others. He is presently owner of Headquarters Media, a management and consulting firm with offices at Live Nation in New York. In 2007, at the Polestar Concert Industry Awards show, Harvey was named Artist Development Executive of the Year for the 6th time. At the conclusion of the show, Polestar retired the award as a testament to his expertise. He currently manages Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, Marky Ramone, The Ravel, and J.D. Simo. He also manages several magicians, mentalists, authors, and represents several major musicians for licensing in the cannabis industry. Please welcome these two rock stars to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your vacations on the beach or whatever you're doing now. I wanted to start off in the present tense. Most of these start at the beginning, how you got started. But first question to you, Harvey. I want to ask you maybe the most important question of all for all of us. What are you listening to right now that has you really excited?
Well, to be self-serving, it's one of my clients, J.D. Simo. who is perhaps the greatest guitar player that I've had the honor to work with since Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I worked with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck and others. And J.D. Simo is a phenomenal player. We have a new album coming out in the fall. The album's called Mind Control. There's a video that hits at the end of the month called Know It All. And he is a know-it-all. And then he goes on a tour for about 10 months with a band from Boston called GA20. And so I'm really excited about J.D. Simo. He's also working on the soundtrack to the movie he's doing in Nashville, to the Tom Hanks Colonel Parker movie. The guy's an extraordinary musician and a great player. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, a band that I worked with back in Epic in 1975, that we're back on the road, just crushing it and killing it and having a party every night. I'm excited about this new young rock band from New Jersey called The Revel. They go on tour and open up their tour with Jimmy Necco and the band Hours in Atlanta starting on Saturday, and they'll be all through Texas, LA, Seattle, Chicago, Detroit. They're called The Revel. You can find them at The Revel, REVEL.band. Do not go to therevel.com. It's a porno site. Great band, great rock band in the tradition of the Foo Fighters, whatever, or the Rival Sons. I'm excited about Marky Ramone. We've got a lot of really interesting, fun projects, both in the music space and in the food space. We once upon a time had a pasta sauce company called Marky Ramone's Pasta Sauce, where we beat out Rayo's. And I'm happy to say I'm still here and alive, because my life was threatened, because it was like, how could you beat Rayo's in the Wall Street Journal? I'm working on a project that we created during the pandemic called Bagel Talk. It's a direct cop on Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews from Barstool Sports, where we review bagel stores. And I do that with Justin Shukat from Primary Wave, superstar lawyer Michael Reinhardt, who's Stevie Wonder's attorney, and Steve Gottlieb, who produces a lot of videos for most every major record company. And finally, I mean, there's a lot of projects I'm working on, but during the pandemic, there was a project I was working on for about 8 years, and it's the Vagina Monologues of Autism. And it's called A Little Bit of a Big Something, that I got to write with Alan Goodman. And, we got some input from Bob Smigel and Triumph the Insult Dog and a lot of other people. And it's exactly what I just said. It's the Vagina Monologues of Autism. And we just did last Saturday our first, I won't call it a table reading, a pizza reading with about a dozen people in my backyard. And it's a project that I'm very excited about, because it's close to my heart, having kids with special needs. And it's called He's Got a Little Bit of a Big Something. So between that and, getting ready to and excited to go back into our office at Live Nation in New York City, and all the concerts and things we have on store, I'm excited. There's a lot on the plate.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Southside Johnny at the Stone Pony in Asbury on September 4th. Before I knew you were managing them, I've logged about 50 shows, because they're the best band that I can see within driving distance of my home here in Nyack pretty well every quarter under normal times. And they are just the greatest bar band of all time. And don't go because Bruce Springsteen might be there, even though he was there last time they played and did a couple of songs. They are just fantastic on their own if you like rock and soul music. And Harvey had connected me with J.D. Simo, who came to our party a couple of weeks ago in Nashville for NAMM. And this guy knows more about music. He is a walking encyclopedia. And not only is he a great guitarist, but he sings like Curtis Mayfield. And unlike Stevie Ray Vaughan, he's got a great rhythm section behind him. So you can really look forward to hearing.
The amazing thing about JD is, he's in his, he's in his early 30s. I'm much older. I could be his father. And I'll make references to certain songs that were, FM staples back in the late 60s. And he blows my mind, his knowledge of music. And he teaches me every day. I mean, he's an encyclopedia of great old, flappy, muddy blues music. I mean, he's extraordinary. He's a brain.
playing Mercury. Is it Mercury in December in New York?
I think, yeah, it's the end of September. We
And
go
it's-
on tour for nonstop. It seems from September to June with GA20 and a lot of his own dates also.
All right. So Harvey, now let's jump to the many years you spent at the most senior levels of labels, especially Sony. What was it like reporting into presidents and CEOs at the time when digital was arriving, and there might have been perhaps a little bit of denial of reality going on, and that must have put you in a bit of an awkward position. What was that like?
Well, if you think about it, that Sony Music, formerly CBS Records, one of the greatest television manufacturers, audio equipment, et cetera, except for their speakers. The Tommy Mottola didn't believe in synergy, and being, the great music man and songman and entrepreneur that he is, he didn't really believe. And a lot of us in the beginning, it was like, so music's going to come from the sky and it's going to wind up on this little box that I wear in my pocket. So there was a lot of denial, and a lot of people just weren't into it. They just didn't believe. I mean, the classic story that I always have is nobody would meet with Fred Davis and the two principals from a company from overseas. And Michelle Anthony said to me, Harvey, go have dinner with these guys. So I go have dinner with these gentlemen and Fred, and they tell me their concept. And I say, there's no way every record company is going to give you access to their library. It's just, it's mind-boggling. Well, those two guys are the two guys that started Spotify. And at the time, nobody would meet with them or talk to them at Sony. And I'm sure a lot of people will rewrite history, but what I just presented is fact. And, it was also, I remember it was like, I don't want a computer on your desk. What's this thing, email? In fact, there's a classic story that Mark Geiger basically registered everybody's name and email accounts, and then gave it to the executives at Sony as a Christmas present, because they just was like, well, an email? What are you talking about? So, but then again, Sony quickly, shifted into high gear. But, there were people just sitting there scratching their head because it was old school, song thinking. Nothing wrong with that. But there were other paths to jump onto.
Yeah. So you do a lot in the live space. Let's jump over there for a minute. A lot of the new restrictions and protocols are really going to have a major impact on the live music business going forward. What's that going to look like? What kinds of costs and requirements is this entailing right now?
Well, it's a moving target at the moment. I know that Live Nation is figuring out its protocols. AEG has some of theirs out. A lot of independent clubs have theirs out, but and there's agents as we speak, canceling dates and tours, because of the second wave of this pandemic. So it's getting wild again, and who knows what's going to happen. And the cost factor, because if you have to have personnel on staff to check people's IDs, have you been vaccinated? Come over here, let me stick this thing up your nose, let me take some blood from you and do an on-site vaccination to see if you're positive or negative. The cost factor to do that is crazy. Plus venues are going to be less capacity. So all of a sudden, the deal that you thought you had in place financially changes because there are a lot of hidden costs and things falling into place, not even day by day, minute by minute. So it's going to get wild again. It's a wild frontier changing. The crazy thing is, at the Dave Grohl Foo Fighters Madison Square Garden concert, earlier this year, was like, welcome back. Oh my God, this is great. And only people that are vaccinated can get into Madison Square Garden. Well, I don't know whether it was a radar screen that, knew that you had it, but they were letting people in. I mean, I don't know how they were enforcing that.
I held up my phone and they didn't look at it while waving me in.
Well, this is a crazy story. So I bought online a plastic case that you wore around your neck, like at a conference. Hi, my name is, and it was to put your vaccine card in. So I bought 6 of them from my family, and they come in the mail with 6 identical blank vaccination cards, front and back. Now, I ordered a plastic case. I didn't ask for a blank vaccination card. So it's like having a false ID. I mean, this is going to get nuts. It's like, gun control and getting a driver's license. I mean, it's not that sophisticated yet, and it needs to be.
Yeah. Well, speaking of putting things up your nose, talk to us a little bit about your time in radio in the glory days of the 80s and 90s, and what some of the more interesting things that are shareable under these circumstances that you can tell us about. When I had Richard Goddard on for this a few months ago, it started somewhat innocently with the cheesecakes, and if they were going to play his records, he had to bring these special cheesecakes, and they loved it, and that was how he sort of got started. I think things escalated a little bit from those more innocent times. So what can you share with us?
Well, one of the first jobs after I graduated college at Sony, CBS Records, Sony Music, was, East Coast College. And then it was like, hey, FM radio's here to stay. And the disc jockeys at the time, before Lee Abrams, one of the greats, but he instigated, rotations and a card system, was free form. So I was known as the lunchtime kid. And I would go to WBCN and WNEW-FM and MMR. And I would take every jock out to a meal to try to get each disc jockey to play my priority and my project that I was working on, because they could play whatever they want. So I was, besides being known as a lunchtime kid, it was Foodola. I would take the great Ed Shockey out, and you fed Hungry Ed, and Hungry Ed, if he liked your record, even though he did fall asleep listening to Boston More Than a Feeling, but he woke him up and I made him feel guilty, and he played Boston nonstop till you couldn't take it anymore. So there was Foodola first. And yes, there was money, and always hidden through a third party in the independents. And yes, there were drugs, no question about it. But it was also like that. It's like that in the food business. When you think why Oreos is at eye level and Jiffy peanut butter is at your belly level, it's called product placement, and that you're paying off with free goods and money to get price and positioning on your product. So it was no different. I always say the food business, frankly, is more corrupt than the music business. But then, as things started to get tighter and tighter, what we came up with was both gift cards, but Sony, making some of the greatest hardware on the planet Earth, it was like you could, we called it hardware-ola. Went from food-ola to hardware-ola, because it's like, hey, if you increase the rotation, add this project, do this, do that, you're, a new television set for either you or the radio station, or new equipment. I mean, I always remember in the very beginning, compact discs that you burnt, they were over $100 a piece. Sony had them. So all of a sudden I could give consultants and radio stations free compact disc that they could burn, their music on. And that was like, wow, because the radio stations are cheap. They still are cheap. They weren't going to give them free CDs to burn on that the staff needed. So we went from Foodola to Hardware-Dola. And then it really got nuts as every radio station started to do a festival and a Christmas concert and a jingle ball and all this. It then became, having your artist play live at their festivals and their shows in exchange for airplay. But again, yes, there were drugs. Yes, there were money. Yes, there's hardware. Yes, there were plane tickets. Yes, there were vacations. But it's no different than what I experienced when I had the Marky Ramone pasta sauce company and I was getting into the food space, and it was crazy what you had to do to get a pasta sauce priced and positioned and promoted and marketed out there in the world.
Fair enough. What do you think of the state of radio now, besides its declining influence with younger people getting their music from streaming service?
Oh, look, it sucks. Classic rock didn't go away, and they still play the same 300 to 500 songs over and over until you puke. Thank God for great radio stations like WFUV and WXPN, and XRT that play, grown up, Americana, whatever the hell you want to call it.
With commercial loads.
Yeah. And then, I love Sirius Radio, but they're also getting tighter than a bullfrog's ass. I mean, it's, and when you talk to a great program like Steve Blatter, he says, hey, but that's not what people want to hear. But I'm like, yeah, but you were supposed to be this alternative to terrestrial radio, and you have all these platforms. I don't want to hear some of the same music on 3 or 4 stations. Yeah, and when you have a classic rock or deep tracks, as I say, go deep, motherfucker.
Well, they do. There are always other stations you can flip to that aren't going to have commercials.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm a Spotify junkie, and I find and I search, and I, like last night I was like, I don't really know much about Johnny Hodges, and I'm listening to a great saxophone player from Duke Ellington that I didn't know very much about. Or I was like, I remember listening to John Clemmer, Waterfalls. And so you start finding music that you knew or you read about and exploring and saying, if you like this, you like that. And so I find searching on something like Spotify, for me, is very rewarding.
It's the best way to really discover new music. It's hard to get it from regular radio stations, and some Sirius XM stations are better than others about playing new stuff. But it's great when something comes out like yesterday, the Tom Morello cover of Highway to Hell with Eddie Vedder and Bruce Springsteen.
But think about how fucking pathetic it is that the world's getting excited about a 40-year-old song, a great song by 2 of the greatest vocalists on the planet and, rock stars, Eddie Vedder and Bruce. And that's what we're getting excited about. 2 of the, the legendary people, Vedder and Springsteen, doing a 40-year-old song. That's pathetic.
Well, finding great music that's truly great, not what you think is great, not what I think is great, not what Tom thinks is great, but the only objective way to say what's truly great is to be able to predict with accuracy what people are going to care about and listen to and seek out in 20 years. And there has been more great music than I feel a lot of my peers are willing to acknowledge. I think a lot of people...
Yeah, but you got to hunt for it, baby. You got to hunt.
It's not easy. But when I do find stuff that I'm certain is great, that I know for a fact people are going to be seeking out and enjoying in 20 years, which is, again,
I'll tell you about 2 things in the spectrum. There's a great artist, Jack Broadbent. Fantastic. Okay? But then the number one thing that the planet Earth, and it's changing the axis of the rotation, is the Italian band Maneskin. I mean, it's doing a cover of ABBA. It's crazy. You know, can you relate to Butter by BTS? I can't. I know how big it is. I know how successful it is.
It's not for us, and I don't think people will be discovering that in 20 years. People that love it now might be reliving the music they loved when they were 13 or 15 and reliving those memories. That never changes. But will people
Hey,
just.
there was a guy painting my house today, and we were talking music, and he goes, "I listen to Q104." I said, "Well, they play the same 500 songs over and over." And he goes, "Yeah, but it's the greatest 500 songs over and over." And he's not wrong. And so for him, a young kid discovering the Pink Floyds and the Bad Companies and the Zeppelins and whatever, for him, that's new and exciting. And he's not in the psychographic of BTS.
Yeah, I think, in a worst case scenario, it'll be like jazz. It might not be the dominant mainstream pop music, but there will be a sizable amount of people that will seek it out, fall in love with it. My son has discovered stuff from it being fed to him on Spotify lists, things that I knew would be great in 20 years, even though people didn't think it was cool at the time, whether it was Counting Crows from the 90s, Fleetwood Mac from the 80s, or Coldplay. I mean, people, will discover and go to this, and there's lasting value there. And I think that's great. But of all the great music I've discovered in the last decade, none of it's really hard rock. The artists that I can name, Bon Iver, Vampire Weekend, my personal faves that I would bet that any amount of money that people will be loving it in 20 years. Nothing in the hard rock sense. So that's what that Highway to Hell cover meant. It had been a long time since I got a blast of really exciting new hard rock music, and this wasn't new, other than my personal fave. So we'll see where it all goes. Someone said recently in the Wall Street Journal that in 100 years, people will only care about Bob Dylan and the Beatles, and people won't know or care about the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or anything.
Well,
I don't believe that at
that
all.
person's an ignoramus.
Well, he got taken
that
down
article.
pretty bad. He got taken down pretty bad, but
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah.
It's the same way the person in the New York Times wrote an article that the West Coast bagels were better than New York bagels. Big argument.
And if you're
Bagel puff. Although I will say, Justin Shukat went out to LA, and boy, did he find great bagels in LA. But saying that the West Coast bagel scene is better than New York, hello.
Montreal bagels put all American bagels to
Please,
shame.
no,
Just
no.
because there's a drop of
We're not
molasses
even,
and
David, change the subject or I'm gonna come after
you
you.
brought it up. You brought it up.
Yeah, well,
I'm not a
Montreal-
Canadian citizen.
Montreal
I-
bagels, hey, no.
All right.
No.
We'll deal with that
Oh.
separately. There are objective
subject.
ways of proving bagel greatness as there are proving musical greatness. You were involved in getting Starbucks started with music, and coffee, much more than bagels, is a passion of mine. And it was a very significant thing when I was getting started in the record business, when places like Starbucks were featuring and selling music. Tell us about how you almost came to work with Starbucks and what the net result was.
I was going in and out of Seattle a lot and traveling around because I was on the road 3 weeks a month. And I was like, man, in Minneapolis and in Seattle, there's this thing called Starbucks. Gee, they charge like $3-4 for this burnt cup of coffee. Wow. And I met the guy who was actually doing all the real estate for them. And he said, we're going to be opening up 1 Starbucks a day for the next 5 years. I said, what the fuck are you smoking? That's the craziest thing I ever heard. Well, in fact, he was correct. But I came up with this idea. If that's in fact true, then Sony hardware should be in every store playing only Sony music. And so I had several meetings with Starbucks in Seattle with Howard
Schultz.
And I had, Mottola involved and Dave Glue, and it was going to be Sony hardware playing Sony music. And I convinced them that Sony music, there's everything from Frank Sinatra to Bob Dylan. believe me, your customer's not going to say, oh, you're only playing one brand of music from one company. There's enough catalog there. So we worked on this project, and it went on for like a year of negotiation. And as all corporations, because they shoot themselves in the foot, it sort of went away. The same way I approached the Food Network about doing food compilations from all the chefs. Sometimes corporations shoot themselves in the foot and get in their own way. So Sony screwed up the deal with the hardware and the songs, and they wanted money, and it just went away. But I knew, and as the years going on, they're opening up. Oh, there's a new Starbucks here in New York. Oh, there's one down by NYU. Oh, there's one over here in Brooklyn. You could see it. It was spreading wildfire. So I just knew that Starbucks was taking over the planet. So I called up one of my old bosses, Bruce Lundvall at EMI. Bruce, and I tell him the story. Starbucks and they music, and she made compilations. Well, within 90 days, Bruce Lundvall had the deal done with Starbucks. And within 90 days, they put out a compilation, which they sold in 2 months, 70,000 copies at point of purchase in Starbucks. And I just sat there going, this could have been Sony Music, but I was happy for Lundvall and EMI and Blue Note Records. But I just knew that Starbucks was like the front porch to America. It's everybody sitting around talking to each other, drinking caffeine, getting jacked up.
It was an interesting chapter in the industry.
It was, there was a crazy project I did before that called the Pizza Network, where I gave free pizza boxes to pizza stores, and every slice was a different new band. And the store loved me because they got free boxes, and I had to deliver it with a cassette. That's how long ago it was. And so stores loved it. They got free boxes, but they had to put a cassette. And while kids were around on college campuses, they were like looking at a box, like Screaming Yellow Zonkers, remembers that, and learning about new bands, and they got a cassette to listen to. And that sort of was the precursor for me thinking about Starbucks.
Well, that's the roots of brand marketing. You did some amazing things in your college years. When we got together a few weeks ago, you told me a great story about the first CBS convention that you went to when you were, I think, running.
Okay, yeah. I had just graduated college in 1975. So I come to work the first day in July, and I have 3 records on my desk: a Miles Davis record, Bob Dylan's Basement Tape, and Poco's Greatest Hits. Okay, but I got to get ready to go to the CBS Records convention. And what do I wear? Oh my God, did I wear suits? And I buy a Lou Magrum leisure suit, kind of like a jungle gym jacket, but I didn't wear, I didn't know what the hell to wear. I didn't know what I was up for. So we go to the convention up in Canada, and Simon and Garfunkel are reuniting, and they're showcasing Phoebe Snow and Howard Melvin and the Blue Notes. And Jeff Beck is going to play the album Blow by Blow from beginning to end, basically in a ballroom that you'd have a wedding or a bar mitzvah. I'm like, holy shit. So now it's great showcases. And Jeff Beck gets up there to play Blow by Blow beginning to end. Wow. But a lot of people are leaving the room, going out into the lobby, drinking, and the room sort of empties. So I weasel my way up to the front table, and I see these empty seats, and I sit down, and I realize I'm sitting at a table with John Hammond Sr., his wife, Bruce Lundvall, and his wife, and me. I said, "Can I sit here?" "Yeah, who are you?" "I'm Harvey from the college department." Sit down. They're pouring me drinks. And there I am sitting with Bruce Lundvall, John Hammond, watching Jeff Beck like you would at a band at a wedding, doing Blow by Blow. And it blew my mind. So later in the night, I'm like, I'm still in my leisure suit, being goody. I go up to my room to go to bed, and I see this guy coming down the hallway with the fire hose, and he's spraying the hallway. He opens up the door to the suite that he's staying in, and he takes a bed and he throws it out the window, and he's got a fire hat. And I'm like, Who the hell is this guy? Oh, he's the head of promotion at Columbia Records, Steve Popovich Sr. And Steve taught me a lot about promotion and records and A&Ring. And I was like, okay, so I'm in my leisure suit trying to be goody goody, but here's this guy, the head of promotion from Columbia Records, throwing a bed out the window, hosing down the hallway. So I said, I think this is a lifestyle I would enjoy.
Welcome to the music business, huh?
Loved it.
Good way to get started.
101.
Our friend and your Sony alumni, Dick Wingate, is asking, Harvey, who is the greatest band you worked with and why was it The Clash? I think that's a loaded question.
Well, it's a loaded question and it's hard to pinpoint the greatest band, but the Clash certainly were fantastic. I can remember being in the studio when they cut the song London Calling. I was in there with the great record producer Guy Stevens, who, those of you don't know, Guy Stevens came up with the name Mott the Hoople. He wrote the lyrics to Whiter Shade of Pale, but he produced probably one of the greatest rock albums ever, London Calling. And what was it like working with them? Insanity, madness. I remember we went over there to hear them. I think it was the time they were recording London Calling. Hey mate, do you play soccer? No. Good, you're the goalie. And they proceeded to kick the shit out of me. Lots of great Clash stories, them locking themselves in the suite in Dallas, Texas at the Hyatt and throwing chairs and everything into the lobby. I mean, but truly a rock band that lived the style of one of the greatest rock bands, period, ever. But there's so many great, I mean, Pearl Jam, Incubus, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and in their own space, Tom Scholz in Boston was incredible. And Dick Wingate, Garland Jeffries was incredible. Incubus is incredible. The Indigo Girls are incredible. It's really hard to say. It's like asking you which kid do you like better? Sophie's Choice. Well, what do you like better? There are a lot of greats.
What was the artist that you most enjoyed working with, regardless of their ultimate greatness in comparison to the others? Who did you have the most rewarding working relationship while you were at Sony? Personally.
That's a tough one. I mean, I loved working in the early days with Meatloaf. That was a fun project. It took a year to get going. And I worked on that with Steve Popovich, one of the greats. Meat was great. Kev Mo, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Early days of Pearl Jam, phenomenal. I'm sure I'm leaving out a shit ton. Boy George, phenomenal. Cyndi Lauper, incredible, just incredible. Luther Vandross, amazing. I mean, it's too many.
All right. Well, let's focus for a minute on one of the biggest, and that would be Michael Jackson. And you had a very close working relationship with Weird Al, who needed permission to cut "Eat It," and tell us about.
Well, nobody gave a shit about Weird Al. He had a song out, another one, Rides the Bus. Bum, bum, bum. Nobody cared about him. And he had written Eat It. And nobody at Sony, well, it was CBS Records at the time, nobody had the balls to ask Michael Jackson, hey, this guy wrote a song, it's a parody of Beat It. But I just loved it. And later on, I had created a thing called Al TV, which we took over MTV and did a parody of MTV on MTV called Al TV. But anyway, so, I got the balls to go set up a meeting to go see Walter Yetnikoff. And I said, Walter, there's this artist on the label, Weird Al. What? Who? And he has a song, it's a parody of Beat It called Eat It. But he needs Michael's permission. I'm not fucking with the golden goose. I said, well, I happen to know that Michael likes Weird Al. How do you know? Because it's right up his sense of humor. He'll love it. And he had a secretary, Bonnie, who looked like a Hell's Angel. Bonnie, Get the golden goose on the phone. Hello, Walter. There's a kid here, Harvey, and he says that you like Weird Al Yankovic. I love Weird Al. Well, he did a parody of Beat It called Eat It. And I read him the lyrics, and Michael is giggling, and he's like, that's the greatest. Long story short, it got approved to make Eat It for $27,500. And Michael actually gave the dancers, the set, everything. So if you look at it, it's pretty similar to the original. And I was really proud of that because obviously Eat It is a classic, as Beat It is the ultimate in classic.
And it sounds like it wouldn't have happened if not for you. So no one.
I will. I
Mark
don't like to take credit, but nobody wanted to go mess with the golden goose and ask Yetnikov. Walter was at the time a scary dude, but I knew I was right. I just knew it.
And for those of you that don't know, Walter Yetnikov was the CEO of CBS in the 1980s, and I think most of the 90s as well.
One of the greatest record executives, one of the craziest madmen, who is also, doing the right thing now with all his money and helping people get sober and straight and rehabilitating. And he works in a soup kitchen, and he's a different man, doing the right thing after he did the right thing as a madman. I think the name of his book was Howling at the Moon.
Right. What made him one of the all-time great executives in your mind?
Because even though he wasn't really the music guy, he was just a great negotiator. In fact, when he signed Pink Floyd, I forget which was the album, there's a lyric in one of the songs, the first Pink Floyd album, I think on Columbia, where I think it's called Have a Cigar. And the song, and so he signs Pink Floyd and he says, oh, by the way, which one's pink?
That really happened.
He was all about the deal. It was about the deal. I remember him at a CBS Records convention going, the record industry it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's going to do $1 billion. What is this guy smoking? $1 billion? Now record companies are doing, 10, 20, 50 billion themselves. Walter was the greatest negotiator character ever.
I had no idea which one's pink was actually uttered, and it wasn't a lyrical interpretation.
I believe I think it's in Have a Cigar.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah. By the way, which one's pink?
So you had some early dealings with Madonna, which I didn't know about because she didn't end up signing to CBS. But what were your early discussions with her like?
I always say, when you're wrong, be very wrong, be big wrong, be the biggest possible wrong. So she came from Detroit to New York, and she was hanging out in the club scenes with Ed Steinberg and a bunch of people. And there was somebody trying to get me, Harvey, you should manage this girl. And she wanted to be, when she came to New York, she wanted to be Cyndi Lauper and Pat Benatar, and she played guitar. And I had several meetings and dinners with her. And I just, the early music, it just wasn't very good, and I didn't hear it. And in that one of those meetings, I said, listen, and by the way, there's a store on Madison Avenue, a maternity store called Madonna. You got to change your name. Madonna, it's a silly name. Years later, she's playing Madison Square Garden. I'm backstage, and she looks at me and she remembers me, and she goes, do you still think Madonna's a silly name? And I said what I just said before: when you're wrong, be very wrong, and admit it and step up, and don't be afraid to say, I was wrong.
All right. So someone just asked, and we were going to do this together in my backyard, but the acoustics weren't cooperating, and I didn't get a chance to ask you, what's the deal with the devil on the stick?
Well, this was given to me as a gift, and usually it sits on my shoulder because there's a little devil in all of us, and I like to live on the edge a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
And we're all going to wind up in hell anyway, because we're in the music business.
Might as well get used to it. That's what we'll be seeing, I guess.
If you can't stand the heat, get out.
Someone's asking what your thoughts are about the current and future possibilities for radio promotion.
Well, it's going away as we know it because you have, because of consolidation, you have one guy in an office somewhere that controls, a chain of stations, 100 stations. And so, when I was growing up, it was like you got in your car and you went to Utica and you went to Buffalo and you went to Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Albany and New Haven and you drove around. Now it's because of consolidation. I think as we know it, it's changed dramatically. It's almost like a one-stop. Go to one place, promote your record, and it goes wide. Or go to one place, they think it stinks, and it goes in the dumper with the devil.
You worked with Oasis, and there was a big UK taping that yielded an unexpected crisis. And
Oh yeah, so that's a good story. So we were doing an unplugged with Oasis with MTV. We had put up like 600,000 MTV. It was $1 million project at the Royal. I can't remember what hall it was, but anyway, very exciting. Load in the audience, and then David Massey and the manager say, "We got to talk to you. What's up?" Liam can't sing. I got the audience loaded in. What are you talking about? So I go in the dressing room and I'm like, "Hey," I hand him a guitar. "Let me hear you sing." And he can't sing. All right, let's get B12 shots, get a doctor here. We do. He can't sing. Well, Noel, his brother, who wrote all the songs, says, "Well, I wrote the songs, I can sing them." Okay, we're going to do the ultimate unplugged. We're going to unplug the lead singer, which we did. But I remember having to call Van Toffler and Judy McGrath. It was late, like midnight New York time. And they're like, "What? You're going to," yeah, it's like having the Rolling Stones, except we're unplugging Mick Jagger, and Oasis at this point, we're huge. They were the biggest band in the world. Long story short, I convinced MTV, you could promote the shit out of this. We unplugged the lead singer. I mean, I'm trying to spin this as best I can. Long story short, we do the show, and up in one of the boxes, opera boxes, is Liam with a glass of champagne, comes down, everybody goes, "Oh, this is great, he's gonna do the encore." Walks up to the piano, hits the button on the piano key, bing, looks at everybody and walks off stage. And that's how that unplugged ended. And it ran maybe a half a dozen times on MTV. It's a classic, but thank God for disposable underwear.
Must have made for great television. I would like to see that myself. I guess, before there was MTV, which is now 40, there was the creation, which you were involved with, of Friday Night Videos on NBC. And how did that come about? And what was it like?
One of my best friends and one of the most creative geniuses in the world is a guy named John McGann. And John worked at NBC. I believe at the time he was working at NBC, either The Source or Rolling Stone radio productions. And everyone's going to change and rewrite history, but I know I was in a hotel room with John Paracol, Lee Abrams, Denny Somack, and they were like, MTV's great, but why doesn't network television play videos? And long story short, we, because everybody's taking credit, the room decides to call it, I'll give it the credit to John McGann, Friday Night Videos. And I bring John to a meeting with a Sony attorney. And there's a lot of drama in that story too. And Dick Ebersol, I think, was John's direct boss at the time there to do Friday Night Videos. But it hatched in a hotel room. I'm going to say the Sheraton across the street from the great Carnegie Deli. And then John again, then Ted Turner decided he's going to go up against MTV, and he created a 24-hour music network that was only on the air for like 29 days. And John was the program director, because I hooked John up with a guy named Scott Sassa. And so very few people remember there was a TBS 24/7 channel going up against MTV for about 29 days. And then MTV bought him and crushed him and put him in the dumper with the devil in the ground.
Oh man. I wanted to talk to you about your perhaps unhealthy obsession with food. It's not just bagels. The first time I was talking to you about City Winery, you were outraged that the quality of the hummus wasn't higher. What types of food do you think are in the greatest need of content servicing them besides bagels?
In City Winery or where?
In general, like what food is worth developing content for?
I'm
What
not
would you-
sure I understand the question.
You've got a series on bagels, like about bagels.
No, I mean, well,
What would be
like,
next? Pizza.
I remember insulting Michael Dorf, who owns City Winery, like, Michael, how the hell can you serve this hummus? It's terrible. And then I convinced him to sell a pastrami egg roll. I'm beating him up now to sell an egg cream with a pretzel stick, because I believe is great, and the new City Winery in Manhattan is phenomenal. But I believe that venues like that should also be food central. People are like, hey, I saw the greatest Kebmo show at City Winery, and man, they make the greatest pastrami egg roll, whatever. So I always look at it as an attraction, because as I traveled around doing promotion for Sony and CBS Records and Music, it was always, I would plan my, Burns Steakhouse in Florida, I got to go there. Oh, there's that restaurant in Atlanta. There's barbecue in Austin. Oh, let's go to Kansas City. Let's go to the Hill in St. Louis. I was always planning my trips around food. It's just an obsession. I love it. I cook. I have 3 green eggs in my backyard and a pig roaster and 3 Weber grills. And I'm just, and I'm also intrigued by, making vegetarian food taste great. I'm not a vegetarian. Everybody would say, why do you go to that place in New York that's a vegan place? Because they make the best spaghetti and wheat balls, and it's vegan. I like it. Like, I love going to Blossom in Manhattan. They make a vegan hamburger with vegan chili on a vegan bun with vegan cheese. That's phenomenal. And you see what's going on when Burger King is selling a phony burger. You see what's going on in the world with, quote, healthy, vegan, vegetarian, plant-based food. It's fascinating. As I speak to you right now, one of my green eggs at home is smoking into its 7th hour. I'm smoking a brisket.
Do you think that eating is compatible with the concert going experience? Do you think people should be?
Yes. And here's, in the Live Nation had a deal with Wolfgang Puck. And he ran a lot of their independent bartending and bars in a lot of their venues. But he also was hired to create something that you could hold in one hand that was salty. So you had to have in the other hand a beer so you could quench your thirst. And the concept was to have, like, there's a pizza roll that sort of looks like an ice cream cone, and it's pizza you could eat with one hand. And the idea was I remember bringing a company in from New Jersey that made phenomenal, they looked like tater tots, but they were deep fried macaroni and cheese that you could eat with one hand, and they were on a stick. So you could hold it in the stick, eat this macaroni and cheese, have your beer in the other, because we all know that beer is and alcohol and parking and ticket surcharges are a way that you're able to pay a large majority of the artists a ton of money. So you have to make your money on these ancillary side projects, and food and alcohol is the biggest.
Yeah, it's important. One quick question, because it's an important one, and I'd be taking notes on all of these food recommendations if I wasn't trying to monitor all these great questions coming in. But very quickly, Ann's asking, who do you say make the best New York City bagels? So forget LA, forget Montreal for now. And who do you think? She's nominating Bagels on the Square. What do you think?
It's a store on 106th and Broadway. I believe it's called Celebrity Bagels. I might have that wrong, but it's 106th and Broadway. Phenomenal. Essa Bagel is also fantastic.
That's a chain, right? There are a bunch of those. So anyone
There's a
can
couple of
enter.
those.
Yeah.
Which store did she mention?
She said Bagels on the Square.
Yeah, Bagels on Square is good, but what I mentioned, I think, are better. And it depends what day part you go. Did you catch them when they were warm in the morning? But Bagels on the Square is good.
So, back to what goes with
By the
live.
way, everybody, please go to Bagel Talk, watch it on YouTube, subscribe, tell your friends.
It's really good. It's better than you'd think. You think. In terms of how music goes with food and live music, I heard Tom say, which I didn't even know, that you're involved with cannabis, and I'm starting to put a panel together for Mondo about experiential music events and cannabis, and there's a company called Pizza Pusha that does a lot of really interesting things with cannabis and pizza and music, and there's another Something Monkey, and they're doing an actual takeover of the Van Gogh experience thing at one of the piers. I saw it in Paris, and there are two competing ones in New York, but that's coming up next week. I think there are going to be some, now that it's legal, some interesting overlaps of music, art, food, dispensary experiences.
100%. You know, I I'm sure Live Nation and AEG and Jam and whomever else, all the independents. Yes, as it gets more and more legal. I mean, I just discovered up in Massachusetts in Great Barrington THC seltzer, phenomenal. But I didn't like their flavors, so I bought the tincture drops, and I make my own seltzer, and then I make my own egg cream. I call it the an electric egg cream. But I see that happening. That there's going to be the bar and the beer, but there's also going to be whether you get a little uh, cardboard tube, go up and get a shotgun of smoke in your face, and you pay for it with your credit card. I mean, it's absolutely coming.
Yeah, it'll be.
Cannabis music experience is it's right in front of us.
Don't you think that public companies like Live Nation and AEG will need to wait for national recreational legalization before doing something major in that?
No,
No?
I think they'll be experimenting it. You know, you know, I could see Live Nation, having, they have Live Nation, they have a lot of different nations. There could be a cannabis nation. I don't know, but
Outside Lands, Outside Lands had a cannabis section. If
it's coming.
Francisco.
Maybe it's coming. Get out of the way.
All right. So, Tom, what's the best question? There are too many great questions coming in, and I'm too riveted by our speaker to be able to properly track them. It's 2:59. We've got time for one question, and I'm going to call upon you to pick the last.
I have two questions. First off, I want to know what Harvey's t-shirt design is. That is such a
Oh,
cool
yeah.
looking shirt. What is that, Harvey?
Well, this is Morse code. And if you know Morse code, you'd have to read across. That's FUCKOFF in Morse code.
No kidding. Where can we get one of those? I like that.
I found it in my t-shirt collection because I collect t-shirts like every other. I mean, I have my Tower records. I think I actually custom made it. Here's a great t-shirt. Who remembers Bleecker Bob, baby?
Oh, man.
Come on. This is one of my favorite. This is a new acquisition. Can you read that? Yeah. Oh, you're from New Jersey? Yeah. This is also in the food space. I found a company called Thug, and they are vegetarian. And this is one of my favorite T-shirts.
So Harvey, you clearly are a branding expert. Which of all the acts that you worked with through your career do you feel like developed the best brand around their band?
Whew. Well, that's the brand. I mean, Pearl Jam certainly is one of the greatest brands, but you know who really knew how to spread it out a lot was Gloria Estefan, her husband, between restaurants, theaters, Broadway show, the music, the Miami Sound Machine. That's a really tough question, you know. But Emilio and Gloria, some of the greatest entrepreneurs. Great, fantastic.
I think back to Chicago and Boston and Aerosmith, bands that had just great logos. And it really started with the Stones and that tongue, which people still.
I mean, the greatest logo is the Rolling Stones tongue. And I always say that tongue is really a representation of the music industry. Because to me, somebody turned on the music industry machine and that tongue is just throwing up music nonstop, 24/7. It's the greatest logo.
It is. It is. All right. Well, we've only gone 1 minute over time, which is better than expected. And Tom, thank you so much for giving us this platform, and thanks everyone for watching. And Harvey, thank you so much for.
Yeah, we really didn't get into any of those really blue stories. You know, there's a lot of fun Michael Jackson stories, but
yeah, man, that was really something.
But I'll tell it to you privately.
All right, all right. We'll have a follow-up one day.
Let me say thank you to both of you. David, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here on this platform, and we welcome you back anytime you want to come with other kick-ass guests like Harvey. Harvey, can we say you're a legend, and I appreciate having you on the program and hearing some of the stories. I know you've left a bunch in the can.
Well, let me say this. When I first saw this series, I was like, the smartest people in the room. Who the hell are these people? And I learned a lot. I was like, oh, they are pretty smart. So then I was going to start my own series, The Dumbest People in the Room. So I want to thank you for letting me be a part of this, because today was the dumbest person in the room.
Not at all, but your self-deprecation serves you well. To the audience, thank you for your time and attention, and keep coming back. And by golly, get a shot if you haven't gotten one already, so we can all get out there and enjoy some live music together soon. Harvey represents a lot of great bands. Can't wait to get up there and see one of them at one of your local watering holes. David's been talking about the Asbury Jukes for a long time.
September 4th at the Stone Pony.
With that, folks, I will say be safe, be nice to each other, and do get a shot. We'll see you later.
Thank you.